Welcome to Natural Habitat Adventures Daily Dose of Nature. I'm your host, Sunny Vanderstar. Today's topic is a 400-year saga, restoring the southern right whale. And it will be presented by Elder Brandao and Karina Groch. Welcome, both of you. Thank you so much for bringing us this fascinating topic, which I know nothing about. So I'm super excited to hear what you have to say. I'll turn it right over to you so we can get started.
Thank you, Sunny. Thank you all for being here. Continuing with some of the conservationists of Brazil. Today, panelist is from the ocean, right? Last webinar, we talked about dolphins, but today's main character is the southern right whale. So over 55 foot long, this beautiful whale that makes great migrations through the southern hemisphere, swimming to subpolar areas in around Antarctica. And to talk about it, I invited Dr. Karina Groch. She has worked with turtles, dolphins, and other whales. Today, she coordinates the project and is the research director. So thank you, Karina, for the opportunity. So please want to say hello to our audience, and you may start talking about your work and these amazing whales.
Thank you, Elder, for inviting me. It's a pleasure always to talk about the species that I have dedicated a great part of my life, most of my life almost. So you see, oh yeah, there we go. So we will be talking about the southern right whale, which is a species that occurs in the southern coast of Brazil. And it's a lovely species, has a beautiful behavior, spent a beautiful part of their life here in southern Brazil. To start talking about the species, I need first to present our sponsor and institution, which is today the right whale research and conservation program is running by Instituto Australis, which is an NGO created to help us to maintain very long conservation project here in southern Brazil, which is now called Franca, which is a project in favor of the right whale. Franca is the name of the right whale in Portuguese. It's Baleia Franca Austral. It's the southern right whale here in Brazil. And this project was created in 2019. And since then, we have the sponsorship of Petrobras, which is the Brazilian oil company, which has been helping us with this sponsorship to maintain the research and monitoring with these species, which is has been very important to keep all the work that we have been doing going on. And I am going to talk a little bit with the species and the work we have been doing here in southern Brazil. So this is the right whale, and as most of you may know, this whale received this name because it was the right whale to be catched. This whale was catched along the Brazilian coast over 400 years, almost to extinction. And since the early 80s, the species began to return to southern Brazil, and then this long-term research and conservation and monitoring program has become to help on the conservation of these species and to protect this area where the species occurs. Also, of course, to understand the areas that are most important for these species and what do we need to do to protect the area and enable the recovery of these species. So it has been almost 40 years monitoring and studying and accompanying the recovery of these species along southern Brazil.
So cool, and this picture is so beautiful, and a lot of people know the North Atlantic right whale, right? So especially U.S. citizens, because they visit the coast of U.S. But tell us, how about the southern right whale, where it lives, where it mates calves and nurses, and how we can kind of distinguish both species, right? It's a hard work to do, right?
Yeah, well, distinguishing between the species that lives in the southern and the northern hemisphere is not that difficult because they are very, very similar. I'm going to show you a map where you can see the distribution of the three species that are currently recognized along all over the world. The northern right whale, the North Atlantic right whale, which is the species that lives along the coast of the US. So many of you may have heard about this species. It's threatened. It's a very threatened species. There is an estimate of maybe a little bit more than 400 individuals remaining along the North Atlantic coast. And also there is the North Pacific right whale that lives along the North Pacific coast, which is a very, very threatened species. There are probably less than 100 individuals remaining. And we have the southern right whale here in the southern hemisphere, which is a species that occur all over the southern hemisphere. However, there are many populations, as you can see. Do you see the point of my mouse if I point?
Yeah, well, I cannot see. Now I can, yes.
Okay, I have to change the screens to show you. But, well, so the southern right whale is a species that occur along the southern Brazilian coast and all this coast of Uruguay, Argentina, and Brazil. So here is Argentina, around here is Uruguay, and here is Brazil. And there is another population that lives here around South Africa, and another population that lives here, occurs here in Australia and New Zealand. These populations do not mix between themselves. They do longitudinal migration, as you can see through the arrows on these maps. However, both the southern and the northern species, they migrate between summer feeding areas and wintering breeding areas. So here in southern Brazil, we have a wintering area where the species spend around 5 months during winter, which is from July to November mostly. This is the period when we have the species along the breeding areas in the southern hemisphere and here in Brazil. So as I told you, as you can see on this image, the southern and northern right whale species are very, very, very similar. We cannot distinguish them just looking on, for example, these photos. You can easily say that this is also a northern right whale. They have similar size, similar length of when the babies are born, and similar weight. They have the body all black mostly, and the callosity is on their head. The blowhole is very separated. The two openings of the blowhole is very separated, are very separated, and when they breathe, they produce this V-shaped blow, which makes them very easily distinguishable on the sea. And you can also think that this blow has a heart shape. So it's very cute to think of right whales blowing like a heart. So they touch our heart even when they blow.
and also,
yeah, no, go ahead.
No, I would just say about that. So please go ahead. It's a beautiful picture.
Sorry. Yeah, and one distinction that we can make when seeing like this picture is that the southern right whales can have white babies. They are not completely white. They are called partial albinos. Because they are not total white. They have these little black dots, as you can see on this image, and they become gray when they grow up. So this is a characteristics of the right whales in the southern right whale that exists in southern right whales only. You don't see white right whale babies in northern right whales. And also, there are some whales that have these dorsal white or gray marks in southern hemisphere right whales, and you don't see northern right whales with these marks. So these are the most distinguishable distinction between the species. Apart from the fact that they don't mix along over the equator, the species that lives in the northern hemisphere doesn't go to the equator during migration, and also the species that doesn't cross through the equator, and the same happens with the southern right whale, that they do not cross through the equator, so they don't mix, and this makes them to be a separate species.
Which help us a lot to identify, right? So
yeah.
Yeah, and there's another species of whale in the southern hemisphere that can kind of confuse us with us, right? Like the humpback whale, right? So how it's good to talk about with the specialists. So how can you distinguish also those species?
Yeah, another very common species of whale here in Brazil, and you certainly knows very well also in the US, they are very abundant over the entire world actually, is the humpback whale. And one characteristic that distinguishes the humpback whales from the right whales is that right whales have this pectoral fin with this shape, and the humpback whale has a very longer pectoral fin in comparison with the right whales, which has a very wide and short pectoral fin. So this, and also the humpback whales are very acrobatic. So they jump like this, they breach like this photo. And so this also makes them, makes easy to see the pectoral fin and distinguish between these species. And here in Brazil, the humpback whale is very, very common. Not specifically here in the same area where we have the right whales, but it's the most popular species of whale along the Brazilian coast. There is another difference between both of them. The right whale has this tail very wide, and the tips are very thin, and in comparison, the humpback whale has this beautiful, colorful tail that sometimes is almost completely white and sometimes almost completely dark. But the shape, you can see the distinction, the difference in the shape of the tail, and also this color is the ventral part of the tail of the humpback whale, which can have a varying pattern of white and black when they dive, and when they dive, we can see different from the right whale that has a completely dark tail, both the ventral and the dorsal side.
Cool. Well, we just showed how to identify 3 species, right? And especially in the right whale, the callosities, that part of the skin that becomes actually white because of whale lice, right? So they're becoming turning them to white, and also this helps, right, to identify each individual, right, like a fingerprint. So
yes,
exactly that picture, and you probably get kind of a great history of each individual, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's very, very interesting, these characteristics of the right whales. And in humpback whales, we can use that pattern, that ventral pattern of the tail, to identify them as individuals, as unique individuals. And for right whales, we use these callosities. The callosities are born with the whale since they are babies. However, after the baby is born, these tiny little craters, the whale lices, colonize the callosities, the dorsal part of the callosities, and then we turn them, the callosities in white, so we can see them from above. If we take a picture from an aerial picture, a picture from above, we can use them as the identity of individual identity of these whales. So here is an example of three different right whales, individual right whales that were photo-identified using the callosities that they have on their heads. We can also use those dorsal marks, the white marks, and also the white and gray marks for photo ID in conjunction with the callosities for the whales, obviously, that they have those marks. They don't change over the years, but the main feature, obviously, which is present in all right whales, is the callosities. And also, you can see on this photo on the right, a continuous pattern of callosities on the head, which is very similar of the pattern that is on most of the northern right whales, North Atlantic right whales. And this is one of the features that can make us to confuse also the whales, because sometimes you can see a photo like this and think they are a northern right whale, because this pattern is much more common on North Atlantic right whales and not very common on southern right whales. I think I have a catalog of around more than 1,000. It's a bit more than 1,000 right whales in our catalog, with photos taken since 1987, when we started to do the idle surveys. And in this catalog, I have only 3 or 4 right whales with continuous callosities on the head. So most of them are the other shape, but you can see the difference between them, and this is stable over the whale life, so you can follow their lives and learn a lot of information about their lives.
So cool. Well, you saw more whales than I saw jaguars in the Pantano.
Yeah. Yeah, so as I was telling you, we can learn many aspects of the life history of these whales through photo identification. One of the aspects is the breeding interval. Through the callosity, through the photographs we have been taking of the whales, we found that right whales can breed, southern right whales can breed. Can have one baby every 3 years. So they come to Brazil to have their baby, and then the gestation after a gestation period of 1 year, then they stay 1 year nursing their baby. Then they wean the baby, and the baby goes and have it's not a baby anymore, obviously, and then it takes its life by itself. And then the female needs 1 year to rest and recover for the next gestation to mate and begin everything again. Sometimes this interval can increase into 4 and 5 or 5 years, which means that the whale had some problem, decided to postpone the gestation, didn't mate or didn't find enough food to recover from the previous gestation, and decided to wait for the next year to mate and have the next baby, to ensure that the survival of this baby is guaranteed, because this is a species that has a breeding strategy that puts all energy into the production of one baby, only one baby. And so the female needs to ensure that the survival of the baby is guaranteed. So she will make all efforts to be strong enough to be able to nurse the calves. And it's interesting this, because when the female comes to, for example, here to Brazil to breed, to have the babies, they don't feed. The right whales don't feed in our area. They only feed in the polar waters, which in our case it's the Antarctic. So they travel here and have the babies without eating anything. They nurse the baby and they go back to the feeding areas, taking care of the baby. Then they stay a while showing the baby how to behave, how to feed, how to take care of itself, and then to begin everything again. So it's amazing how these whales make all this effort in the survival of the calf.
So cool.
Yeah. And also through the analysis of the photographs, we know that these whales can have the first baby around it's 8 years old. It can be before, but most of females that of which the age is known, it was found that they have the first baby when they are 8 years old. So it takes a while to a whale to take a baby. And also we know that the whales can live around maybe more than 6 to 8 years old. So it's a species that can live for a while, like us, live all the many years. And so to learn information about this species takes monitoring and research and studies over decades to have all this information that I am presenting to you. Cool. I think, yeah, we can go to the next slide. So another very interesting information that we can find through the callosities, the pattern, or to the identification of these whales as unique individuals, is when we compared our photos with whales photographed in other areas. And we did this with a catalog of right whales photographed of Argentina. And we found a few whales like that were also using the Argentine area to breathe, to have the babies. So to give you an example, this is one of the whales. It's called J dot here in Brazil, and in Argentina they call her dot J because she has this little white mark on the dorsal area, which looks like the letter J with a dot. And for some reason, I heard the name when I was in contact with the researchers there, and I memorized J dot instead of dot J. So we decided that here in Brazil we were going to call her J dot. And I mentioned this whale especially because she was here last breeding season, this last winter. She was here having her 7th baby here in Brazil, which is beautiful to have been able to follow this whale all this time. So the first year that we found her, that we sighted her and photographed her in Brazil was in 1988, but she was already known in Argentina since 1973. So this whale I was born in 73, so this whale has more than my age. He's older than me. So it's beautiful to follow the life of this whale, which can be at least, which she can at least have the same age as I have.
So cool, this subject. I mean, you're just talking about now migration. Let's talk about that because this is fascinating me. I mean, it's an incredible migration that this whale does, right? So going to Antarctica, feeding there, actually going to South Georgia, which is incredible, fantastic area for wildlife. And I mean, and they winter there, and going to Brazil, Uruguay, Argentina. So there's so many miles that she goes through. So how it happens, the migration? How do you monitor this?
Yeah, so there is one way of learn about the migration of these species, like a species like a right whale, which can be identified through photographs, through a natural mark that they have on their body, is taking photographs of this mark and follow through the areas and have a look and be lucky to track this whale over the areas, taking true photographs. But also there is another technology that has been enabling to follow the movements, not only to see the whale, to make like a match of the whale in certain areas, but also track their path during migration. So this technique is the satellite tracking technique, which is when we deploy a little instrument on the body of the whale, and this sends signals to a satellite that transmit the signal to our computer, and then we can follow and monitor the whales as long as this equipment stays attached to the whale body. So in Argentina, they have been doing this for many years. I brought here an example of track of many right whales that were tagged, that were tagged. We say that we tagged them when we deployed this equipment on the whale's body. So many right whales were tagged in September and October this last year in Argentina, in Peninsula Valdez, to be more specific. Let me show the next. For this, I just need to mention that this is a project that I am not involved in, so I'm just bringing here to show you what has been done to monitor and follow and track the movements, the migration path of right whales. And we hope to be able, and we are planning to do something like this here in Brazil too. But and this project can be followed through a website, which is Siguiendo Ballenas. It's in Spanish. And to give you another example on migration, which is pretty cool actually, I point here these whales that have been that are still transmitting their location through these tags that were deployed on their bodies. So if you go to the website, you can see a live track of these 5 whales that are still transmitting. So I brought you here an example, close view. So this whale that you can see here is a Maltea, and she is a female, and she was with a baby when she was tagged here in the Peninsula Valdez in Argentina, and she has been doing this movement. If you follow only this green, well, there are many green lines here, but if you follow this one, you can see that she is now today, the print of this, a frame of this page of their web page, Amalthea is here, almost reaching South Georgia. So she was tagged on the end of September. It has been 3.5 months. So she was taking this time. She took all this time to come to go to South Georgia. So it's a very interesting and a very important information that we need to obtain from these whales, because then we can learn the places where they go to feed, where they go to interact with other whales, with other. Here is the Malvinas or Falklands, and some whales have all, including go through this area. So it's a very diverse, a very interesting migration path that you can see of all the tracked whales. And we hope to be able to do this to put some transmitters on whales in Brazil. But Elder, you have a question?
No, just to give you a heads up, like we have something more about 15-20 minutes, so you can have an idea.
Okay, and but we never deployed satellite transmitters on whales in Brazil, but we were partner of this project, the Right Whale project in South Georgia, which was conducted by the British Antarctic Survey. And they were able to deploy 2 transmitters on whales in South Georgia, and one of them reached Brazil. These transmitters were deployed during summer because this is where when the whales are in this area. And then juvenile whale was tracked over 40 days, took over 40 days to reach the southern Brazil. And like here I have a closer view when this whale called Braveheart reached the southern of Brazil, the south of Santa Catarina state, which is the state where I live. So that was the first time that we were able to track a migration pattern of a whale coming from a feeding area to a breeding area. And this is also a very important information. It's the opposite than the information we are getting from Argentina to make migration to South Georgia. And we had also, as a result of that partnership of the project conducted by the British Antarctic Survey, for the first time, a match of a whale photographed here in Brazil when she was a baby, which was in September 2002. And then 18 years later in South Georgia during the summer, which is the photo of the right here, she was sighted in January of 2020. So this was the first time we have a photographic match between a whale photo identified in Brazil and South Georgia, which is also a very important information that brought to us the information that this whale was feeding around South Georgia. We don't know we don't know the place where the whales that come to Brazil have food, but South Georgia is one of the areas, and there are more areas that are needed to be found. And as you could see through the tracks of the whales in Argentina, they go to many places. So it's possible that whales that are coming to breed in Brazil also go to different places to feed.
Oh. And when they come to Uruguay, Argentina, and Brazil, they get pretty close to the coast, right? I mean, so there is any interaction with people or boats, or tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, as you can see on this photo, they can get very, very close to the coast. And this is typical, this is common, this is most of the time where the whales are here, they stay like this. You can see from the shore. As you can see also on this picture, they sometimes can even get very close to the surfers. The whales used to stay where the surfers wait to get wait for whales for surfing. So this is a very, very common view when they are here in winter from July to November. And as I told you already, they come to have the babies, and on this picture you can see this very little, very, very, very little tiny baby, which is right after this baby was born, probably very few days. And we were lucky to get this picture, and which was from last year, from 2021. And then after the whale arrives here, she arrives pregnant, the baby is born, and then she spends some 2 to 3 months taking care of this baby until he is strong enough to go back to go to Antarctic and start feeding by itself, and then everything continues. Their life gets by themselves. And we can also have mating groups here, which have not been very common in the recent years, but we can have mating groups. It's likely that the right whales mate in other areas, mostly, not necessarily here in Brazil, but they have the babies in here. Yeah, so this here in this area we have been monitoring and doing research on the species because obviously there are many potential threats that can prevent the recovery of this species. As you can see on this picture, this is a harbor. This is Imbituba Harbor, which is the city where I am located right now. Has an important harbor, and the whales visit the harbor, as you can see in the picture. And
so this is a threat, right, to the conservation of the species. I mean, tell us a little bit about all the threats.
Yeah, so besides having this harbor in this area, because this is a coastal harbor, the whales, the threats are not that strong, and we have implemented 10 years ago a monitoring program to prevent problems arising from the presence of this harbor. One of the problems that cannot cure is noise pollution because of the movements of the ships, and also collisions with ships. As you can see on this photo, this is a right whale that was struck by a ship. It was not, this whale was not sighted here in Ibituba. She was sighted close to another harbor in the north of the state of Santa Catarina. So it's likely that she was struck by a ship close to that harbor, or even a fisherman ship. She was lucky enough to survive on this encounter, but as you may know, many northern right whales, North Atlantic right whales, have not been so lucky to survive, and this has been a major threat to the recovery of the North Atlantic right whales. Another potential threat to right whales, both in many places of the world, are the entanglement in fishing gear. So, however, here in Brazil, we have artisanal fishing close to the coast where the whales are, and these have not been posing much threat to the species, to the survival of the species itself. We have been learning through the monitoring, through the photo identification of these whales, that they can get rid of the nets by themselves. They cross the nets, they take off one piece of the net over their heads because they are strong enough to break these nets. And then a few days later, we can see this whale without net. So it causes stress, it causes make us a problem to the calf, to the survival of the calf, but not the death of the whales itself. So we have been monitoring these, obviously. And to protect all this area where the whales are, we have created a protected area, which is the right whale environmental protected area, to protect the main concentration area of the species, which is in Santa Catarina state, along some 130 kilometers of coast. And this area has been, with this protected area, we have been able to manage the human activities that may pose potential threats to the whales in this area.
So nice. And I know you have a story quite cool to tell us about monitoring, actually, and especially when they get trapped in the beaches, right? Beautiful story about a whale called the Sunset, right?
Yeah. Well, in 2003, we found this whale stranded in a lagoon. She entered through a channel and she swam along 14 kilometers of coast, and she got stuck on this lagoon, which was very short, and she was not able to free herself. I say she because we knew this whale from the previous year. We further identified her through this mark, through this dorsal gray mark that she had on the body, and she's a female, and we could see because she was rolling around her body because she got very stressed when she stranded in this lagoon. That was the first time that something like this happened, and we were lucky enough to manage to put a rope around the whale body and to tow her using a boat. Let me jump to next slide. Yeah, using this boat to tow her back to the sea. And when we released the whale by the sea, it was as the sunset. It was the end of the second day of this training. It was the end of the day, so it was the sunset. And 15 years later, in 2017, we found this whale back here in Brazil. We photographed her during one of our aerial surveys when she was back in Brazil for the first time, or at least she was the first time that we were lucky to photograph her coming back after she was rescued. And we could recognize her again through her mark, and she was with this little white baby. So, and we sighted her on a beach called Sun Beach, in Portuguese, Praia do Sol. So that's why we gave her the name Sunset. And as she and J. Dot and some other whales, when we have these very known whales or these special whales that we know very well for some reason, we give names. They are the most lovely ones. But it's just because they are special, something happened with them, and then we decide to give names and tell the people their stories. So one way of telling the people their stories was a proposal that we made to the Brazilian government to create a right whale day to celebrate the return of the right whales here to Brazil to breed after the return of this whale, after the return of Sunset on the 31st of July in 2017. So since then, we have been celebrating the Right Whale Day on the 31st of July here in Brazil. And that's a way to promote, to do education, to raise awareness to help us in our mission on the conservation of right whales here in the region.
So nice. And you also created an adoption program, right?
Yeah, so we have been able to maintain our research through many ways, through sponsorships, through monitoring programs, but we need more. We need to keep running this program going on. So one way of raising funds for that, and you may have also heard about the whale adoption programs that you have from many institutions there in the US. Also, we created our whale adoption program here in Brazil. So Sunset is one of the whales that have been that was put to symbolic adoption, and the J. Dot is another one, and also Sluffy, which is that whale that was sighted, that was born in Brazil and sighted in South Georgia, also is for adoption. So that's a way that we found to let people to help us in our mission to protect and monitor these still endangered species along the Brazilian coast. In our website, you can find information on how to adopt this whale. So the website is baleiafranca.org.br, as you can see on this screen.
Nice. And since we're getting close to the webinar, how is the conservation of the species now?
Yeah, well, this species has been growing at a rate of 4.8% per year, which is a very good rate. And the population is around 550 reproductive females. The species is protected in Brazil since 1986, but it still is considered endangered because the numbers are very low compared to what there was many years ago. And to raise this information, we have been doing the research and monitoring, as I mentioned before. So through aerial monitoring, to doing aerial surveys, to collect photographs for the photo ID of the species. We have been doing boat surveys to collect skin samples for stable isotope analysis, to try to understand to find the feeding areas, to identify the feeding areas of these whales here in Brazil. And we have been doing land-based monitoring to understand the patterns of occurrence along the season, this from July to November, to generate information, also to we have been doing a work with fishermen to understand the areas where the whales overlap with the fishing, and then with their help try to find a way to minimize the problems, the threats that have been, the problems that have been going on when the whale find the net of the fishermen, and is a bad situation for the fishermen because they lose a piece of their net. And it's a very bad situation for the whale that gets stressed and can even die in the worst cases. So we started this work 2 years ago, and we are planning to continue also. And we have a work with children, obviously, for education, for sensibilization, for awareness of all the people that come here to see the whales, to visit, and also the people that come as a tourist here, because this is a very tourism area where whales are very close to shore. You can see the whales very close, so you don't even need to go. Sorry, I missed a slide. You don't even need to go to on a boat to see these whales in this area. So it's a very important area where we can promote tourism during the winter to watch, to observe these species.
Like a vacation with the whales. The program.
Yeah. Well, for Americans, it's, you can take your summer vacation and come to Brazil, see the whales, see right whales.
Yeah.
And we have this visitor center, which is the place where we concentrate our activities. And I am right here now behind this window. And so we have many information on the whales here, where the tourists can visit. And we have a whale skeleton. We have this replica, which is a real size calf, and this painting on the wall is a real size mum of this calf. And we have a 4 meters long skeleton that is open to visit. And I think, yeah, just a quick one almost last comment, that when we do the monitoring, we provide the information on the sightings, on the right whale sightings, on a map, through a map on our website, which is free for everyone that can come by itself and see the whales and find a place where to see the whales. And also people can come here. We show where the whales are. We explain how to watch, how to observe their behavior, and also for sometimes depending on the time of the year, you can see whales right here in front of our center. And all the information that we generate are taken to international meetings, to national meetings, and also to the government, the Brazilian government, and local authorities to promote the management of the area to protect this very threatened species. And to help us on this, also we have videos and a web series on YouTube, which is called Prof Franca, our YouTube. Unfortunately, we don't have a translation to English yet, but we are planning to do so. So you can see beautiful images and even try to learn Portuguese. And in the near future, we are planning to do a translation of all these materials that have information on the whales. And with this,
there's a thing there in YouTube. You can get some translation there. It's not really good, but
yeah. That's great. I didn't know about that. That's great. So, and I think this, yeah, thank you very much for this opportunity. And I'm open for questions, and please feel free. Thank you very much for inviting me to talk about these whales that I love so much.
Thank you very much. I think we'll go for the questions.
There are so many questions. I'm trying to organize them in groups because there are lots and lots of questions. So we'll breeze through this. The first one is the shape of the heart-shaped spray. that you spoke about, is that just for right whales, or do other whales have the potential to create that shape of a spray?
Yeah, that's a good question. Other whales can also have the potential to do this blow, because all the whales, the baleen whales, which are the true whales, have two blowholes, and in some of the species they are more separated, and in other species they are not. So, but the most typical very open V-shaped blow or heart-shaped blow is for right whales.
Interesting. So beautiful too. So we've got lots of lice questions. I'm going to try to group these up, but how big are they? Do they hurt the whales? Do they move? Like if they start out in one position when the whale is young, do the lice migrate to different parts of the whales, or what keeps them in check?
Yeah, they are very tiny. They are 1 centimeter long as the biggest ones. So they are thousands that live in colonies over the callosities of the whales. And when the baby is born, they have the callosity, and there are 3 species of whale lice that colonize the whale head. So when the baby is very young, right after it's born, one species, which is color, has an orange color, is the first one that jumps from the mom to the baby and stay around the callosities. After a few weeks, the baby starts swimming more, swimming faster, stronger. Then this whale lice doesn't survive on the whale when the baby starts to swim faster. Then the white cyamids, which there are 2 species that are white, and they jump from the mother to the baby, and then these white cyamids go to over the callosity itself. It doesn't change their place. They don't go around the whale skin, because the surface of the skin on the callosities is different from the skin of the whale. It's more, how do I say that? It's more thick. And then the white cyamids are specialized to attach to this thicker skin. So they stay on the callosities for the rest of the whale life. That's why we can identify them and be sure that these are the same whales that we have been following for many years.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's excellent answer. Okay, what about the survival rate of these babies? Like, do orcas eat them as they migrate? What are the predators they have to look out for?
The natural predators of right whales are orcas and sharks. But when they are here in the breeding areas to have the babies grow, one of the reasons is to prevent them to be attacked by orcas or sharks, because in our area there are no orcas or sharks close to the coast. And then when they go to Antarctic, to the feeding areas, the babies are a bit bigger, they are stronger, and they are almost able to protect themselves. But we don't know the rate of predation, and the rate of survival is very good. For example, this year we had during the breeding season here in Brazil, we have very few strandings. And for example, this year we had at least 60 calves born, and only 1 stranding. Only 1 calf was found stranded dead. So it's a very good rate of survival in general.
Okay. We loved hearing the stories about how the whales got their names. Can you share how did Braveheart get his or her name? What's the story behind that?
Yeah, well, Braveheart is the name of the ship, the research ship that was in South Georgia with the team of the Antarctic Survey. and that's why they put the name of this whale of the ship on the whale.
Got it. Got it. Yeah, that seemed like a really fun thing, all the names and all the meanings behind those.
Yeah.
Nothing to do with movie.
Yes. Do the whales ever get aggressive with the surfers? Or is there any interaction that you've observed or been told about?
No, not at all. What happens is that a mother is always protective of the baby. So if the mother thinks that the baby is like something like threatened by the presence of the surfers or anything that is around, she will be willing to protect by going beside the thing that is threatening and the baby. So if the baby is curious, and sometimes it is, and goes to swim close to the surfers, the behavior of the whale, the mother will be probably to go there and separate the baby from the surf. And at this moment, because the whale is too big, she can be kind of aggressive just by their presence or by her presence or her size, because she will go and swim between the whale and between the baby and the surfers, and may even hurt a surfer while she's swimming. Sometimes she can swim strongly. And one alert that we see that the whale do when she's when the moms are like mad with something is that they blow very strong. They produce a sound when they blow, like that's a signal that don't get close to a whale, because she doesn't want you to get close. And also here in Brazil we have a legislation that prevents we cannot swim towards a whale, we cannot swim close to a whale, we cannot swim less than 50 meters closer to the whale. So the better behavior of the surfer is, if a whale gets close, get away from the water, wait until the whales are out of that area, then you can go into the water again. That's the best thing to do. And we've seen some interactions, and last year particularly there was an interaction that was something like that. The mother was going to protect the baby wanted to stay in a very shore area close to the surfers, and there was some interaction, and the surfers was like completely scared and amazed about what happened. But there was no surfer got hurt during the interaction, but they could. So that was not a good thing to do, to stay there when there was a whale around.
Wow.
Yeah.
I
don't recommend.
No. Some folks are interested in the whale adoption. Can you share that link? Is that something you have available?
Yeah, it's a link in our website. I don't know how can I, or maybe Elder can help me to type. I don't know if you have a comment.
You could just read it out loud if you have it.
Yeah, I can. Well, it's here. Let me show you here. I can go backward, and then you can.
I don't know if everybody were able to hear. I was not able to hear.
Okay.
Now it's fine again.
Yeah, but let me try to go back to where I have here. Yeah, this is our website and the page where we have the adoption program available. And actually, you won't find now an option for like a credit card payment or something like that. We have only direct transfer to our account at this moment. We are waiting for the machine to arrive to make the credit card option in our site to make a link. So because these are very recent launched whale adoption program, we launched like a month in December, right before Christmas. So you please go there, see, and if you are interested, you can contact me And I will let you know as soon as we have the credit card option, the international payment option available for adoption.
Excellent. Thank you. I think we have time for just one more quick question. So I'll make it a two-parter just to try to cover as much ground as possible. How old can the females be and still be able to reproduce? And then what is the ratio of adults, male versus female? Is it do you see it changing over time, or is it pretty steady?
No, in general, the ratio between males and females is 1:1. However, we don't see the males here, but this is the natural ratio calculated for whales, for most of the whales. Mm-hmm. And when we sexed, there was a study made by partners of us that collected skin samples to do genetics, and they sexed the babies, and the ratio was 1:1. So here in our area, so that's the ratio that we have of whales being born here. Mm-hmm. And the other question was, sorry,
how old can the females be and still reproduce?
Yeah, well, as you can see through .j, she is at least 47 years old and she is still having babies. And this is one of the oldest whales that we have having babies, so we don't have this information completed yet because we were not old enough in whale studies to have more than this information. Even in Argentina, the research started in the 70s, and also in South Africa. So in these places, that's why we have this long history of for .j, mm-hmm. and so we are still learning that information.
Well, that's all we have time for, so I'm going to just turn it back to you for any closing comments.
Thank you again, Karina. It was wonderful to hear your work, to hear your efforts to conserve this beautiful whale. Thank you all for being here, and I hope to see you around the world in some trip. So thank you, Karina.
Thank you, Elder. Thank you very much for inviting me. That was a pleasure to talk about the whales and our work here in Brazil. And please come to visit us. And I would like also thank our sponsor, Petrobras, who has been enabling us to keep all this work going on. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to do so. And also thank you to the adoptants that we have already, many Brazilian adoptants that have been helping us, that will help us to keep our project going on. And if you have an opportunity, come to visit the right whales in southern Brazil, get your summer vacation and spend some time here, and it will be a pleasure to receive you here in our White Whale Center in Itapirubá, which is a beach in the city of Imbituba in the state of Santa Catarina in southern Brazil. We are some 100 kilometers south from Florianópolis, which is the capital city of Santa Catarina state.
All right, you don't have to invite me twice. I'll see you soon. Thank you for making me a fan of the right whale. That was fabulous. And it's just so nice to see the passion in your eyes and in your voice when you talk about these creatures. Wonderful work. Thank you both again. And I want to thank everyone who tuned in. Please join us next week for our next Daily Dose of Nature. You can check out this week's lineup, including registration links, on our website at nadhab.com/webinars. We did record today's presentation, and we will have the replay available on our website soon. With that, I'll conclude the webinar. Everyone have a wonderful week. Thanks again.
Thank you.